human factor. We all hear about security as a technology problem, but I hope by the end of my presentation today, you'll see it's not only a technology problem, but also a people problem. So let's go back several years ago. There was a guy named Stanley Mark Rifkin who worked at the now defunct Security Pacific National Bank in Los Angeles. And Stanley's job was to design a backup system for the bank's wire transfer network. So one day, he makes an appointment with the supervisor of the call center in the wire transfer center to kind of understand their processes, to find out any gripes with the system, what suggestions they have for improvement. So the very next day, he walks into the call center in his nice Armani suit. He has a clipboard, yellow pad, pen, and he's ready to go to work. As soon as he walks into the call center, and the call center was probably a 16th of the size of this room, he looks on the wall, and there's this huge post-it note. And on this post-it note is written the number 4711, and that was the code for the day. So any authorized bank employee would have to know this code to transfer money. So over the next hour and a half, he was interviewing the clerks, he's taking notes, calls are coming into the call center. He could only hear one side of the conversation, but he couldn't kind of get a gist of what's going on. After he interviews the clerks, and he's taking a lot of notes, he leaves the call center, and on the way back to his office, he stops at the payphone in the bank's lobby in Glendale, California. And this time he changes hats. He's not Stanley Rifkin, he's Michael Hansen from the International Department. He calls up the wire transfer center, and the first thing the lady asks is, may I get the code for the day? And he just saw it an hour ago. It goes 4711. She goes, how may I help you? I'm with the International Department. I want to wire $10,200,000 through Irving Trust in New York to Waschtrat Headless Bank in Zurich. And she goes, no problem, sir. May I get your inter-office settlement number? He kind of scratches his head. He looks down at his pad. And nothing had come up about inter-office settlement number. So rather than getting nervous and just ending the call, he says, well, let me call you right back. Hangs up the payphone, puts another coin in, and now calls the International Department. And this time he changes hats, and now he's George with the Wire Transfer Center. And he wants to know their department's inter-office settlement number. Well, the young man that answered the telephone thought it was a piece of innocuous information. Said it was 2478. And then Stanley or Mike calls back the lady in the Wire Transfer Center. He goes, oh, our department's inter-office settlement number is 2478. She says, your transfer of $10,200,000 will be done in the next 24 to 48 hours. Well, it's been reported later, Stanley felt like he had won the lottery when he hung up the phone. So now there was a problem. There was $10,200,000 being wired to Zurich, and Stanley had to figure out how to get the money back into the United States. So prior to flying to Switzerland, he brokered a deal with a Russian diamond company. A week later, he arrives on Swiss soil. The bank still hadn't realized that they'd been a victim of a fraud. Stanley brokers the diamond deal, and now he's in his hotel room running his hands through $10 million worth of diamonds. I wonder how that felt. So now he's thinking, well, now he has to get the diamonds back into the United States. So Stanley was thinking, well, he's not going to use FedEx because that's a little bit suspicious. So at London's Heathrow International Airport, he purchases a money belt, stuffs the diamonds into the money belt, and then prays to God on the way back to the United States that he's not going to get searched by U.S. Customs. He arrives back at LAX International, he whisks through customs, and now he's back in Los Angeles, $10 million richer, and the bank still haven't realized they've been a victim of fraud. No clue whatsoever. A few days later, Stanley calls up his lawyer, a guy named Gary Goodgame, and invites him to lunch at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And over lunch, Stanley reaches into his breast pocket, pulls out 3 large diamonds, pushes it over to his attorney, and says, this is my gift for you. And when Stanley was meeting with his lawyer about was dissolving his consulting business because now he's a wealthy man and no longer needs to work. So the attorney picks up these diamonds and goes, Stanley, come on, these are zirconium, these aren't real. And then, you know when you're a kid and you do something sneaky or mischievous, and you just have to tell one of your buddies about it and get that grin on your face? Well, this is the grin Stanley had when he's telling his lawyer how he defrauded the bank. And Stanley presumed he had attorney-client privilege, so it was safe to tell his attorney. But that afternoon, his attorney went straight to the FBI in Los Angeles and told him the story. Eventually, Stanley became a fugitive. Been there, done that. It's not a pleasant task. And several months later, the FBI shows up at a friend of Stanley's in San Diego, California. They're pounding on the door around 6 a.m. His friend answers the door. He goes, how may I help you? There's two FBI agents standing there. Is Stanley Mark Rifkin here? No, what's wrong? I haven't seen him in years. And then the FBI agent starts telling this guy what the penalties are for harboring a federal fugitive. All of a sudden he goes, oh, Stanley's here, come right in. And he lets the FBI agents into the apartment. They find Stanley, but more importantly, they find the diamonds. Unfortunately for Security Pacific National Bank, the diamonds went up in value, so they made a profit. So that was kind of cool. So Stanley was let out on bail. And when he was let out on bail, pending trial, an undercover FBI operative befriended Stanley, and they both conspired to do the same fraud against another financial institution. But this time, Stanley had no idea it was undercover FBI. He was arrested a second time. Eventually, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but was actually released in 3 for good behavior. And that's the story of Stanley. Why is that important today? And this case happened 20 years ago, is because Stanley used the same skills and techniques that computer hackers use and identity thieves use, a technique that I like to call social engineering, to trick somebody into a course of action that benefits them. And a lot of data processing managers and CIOs that I've spoken to over the years, some of these individuals believe to solve the security problem, it's all about technology. I need to buy that nice and shiny firewall. I need to buy this intrusion detection system. The truth of the matter is you can have the best technology that money could buy, but if an attacker could convince one person inside your organization to make a bad decision, to release information, or do some sort of action item, all that money you spent on technology is simply bypassed. So to have a meaningful and effective security program, it's all about people, processes, and technology. And by having those items combined, that way you have a meaningful program. So today, I'm not only going to discuss about what social engineering is, I'm going to actually do a lot of cool demonstrations that I think will wake you up and go, oh my God, you'll have that aha moment. So what exactly is social engineering? It's a form of hacking that uses deception, manipulation, and influence to get a target, namely an employee at your company, to comply with the request. Usually to release information, a password, an IP address, what type of software they have running on their desktop, to doing some sort of action item, opening a document, clicking on a hyperlink. And hackers use social engineering because it's much easier than hacking a system. Mind you, in today's world, there are so many websites out there where security researchers post what we call exploit code. And this exploit code exploits vulnerabilities in operating systems and so on and so forth. But the problem is when you're attacking a system, when you're doing it live, in the wild, you have to account for the target's environment. What operating systems are they running? What service packs are they at? What patches have they applied to the system? So it's a little bit more work than social engineering. Social engineering invades all intrusion detection systems on the market. There's nothing out there that can detect these types of attack because it goes to the people. It's free or low cost. Why is that? Because a lot of times hackers will call on your company's toll-free number, so your company is even paying for the call. Works on every OS system platform. He could be running Windows 7, Windows XP, Mac OS, doesn't matter. It's system independent. There are no logs. It's nearly 100% effective. In fact, a couple years ago, I had a CIO of a major bank invite me to lunch. She had put her people through an intensive security awareness training program on how to detect these type of attacks. The bank hires an outside company to test their network, and within like 10 days, they were able to get in through social engineering attacks. And most importantly, we still can't go to Windows Update and download a patch for stupidity. It just doesn't exist. It's not because people are stupid, but it's because there's a sense of gullibility of people that don't know how this all works. So who's the real problem? It's the users. And this is a survey that I bring up time and time again. There's a security conference in the UK, and every year they do these projects. This one year they went out to London's Waterloo Station with free pens, and they would ask passers-by for their password in exchange for a free pen. How many comply? 90%. So 90% of your users will freely give out their password. So they were so shocked by the survey, they went back the next year, but this time with Mark and Spencer's chocolate Easter eggs, and only 7 out of 10 complied. Then there was this concern of identity theft. So the last time they went out to the theatrical district in London, the guy would be, a windbreaker, have a yellow pad and say, hey, offer free passes to the theater if you fill out the survey. So they ask the name, everybody gives out their name. What's your date of birth? Why do you need to know my date of birth? Well, to get we have to make sure you're at least 18 years or older to qualify. Oh, okay, my date of birth is such and such. Then the survey would take her, say, you look kind of like an actor or an actress. Have you been in the movies or on television? No? Well, where did you go to school? What did you study? First, over 90% would give out the name of the school. And this is the one that always gets me, which I can't believe people would answer, is the survey taker would say, for the purposes of the survey, a lot of actors combine their mother's maiden name with their pet's name. So for the purpose of their survey, what would your stage name be? Again, 90%, over 90% of the people give out this information. At the end of the survey, to get that free pass to the theater, the person would give out enough information so the survey taker could impersonate them to their bank and possibly reset their password. So it kind of gives you the sense that people are very loose with information. I travel a lot, not only to Spain, but I was in Bogota, Colombia, and I kind of have an eye for spotting security failures. So I walk into the cell phone store, which is ComCell, which is, by the way, is not Movistar, they're not Telefonica. And I walk in there, and I see this lady is wearing an RSA Secure ID dongle around her neck. So I could see the 6-digit code just by walking into the store. So I wanted to order a SIM card, so I could have a local number on their network. And I see the lady, she was like, didn't know how to type, and she would type in her PIN code, look at her dongle to sign on to the network. I still remember her PIN code was 5426, right? So my question is why do people wear their password dongles around their neck? Again, maybe there's that sense of invulnerability. So what are the common attack methods in social engineering? I think the primary one is convincing a target to visit a website that hosts malicious code. Okay, so the attacker has done some research. They could even, for example, contact somebody else at the company, find out what browser they're using. Is it Internet Explorer? Is it Firefox? What versions are they using? And then identify a vulnerability in the browser. Maybe even a vulnerability that the browser manufacturer has no idea about. So now the hacker only has to lure the victim to visit a website that hosts exploit code that exploits a vulnerability in the browser, and now the attacker has complete control of the machine. You would think, does this really happen? Will it happen to Google? Google employees are running an older version of Internet Explorer, IE6, and attackers allegedly from China had used this exact attack method to break into Google. When that employee that was running Internet Explorer 6 went to the website that the attackers wanted them to go to, it exploited the vulnerability, and now these guys were into the computer that was connected to Google's internal network. By the way, is it possible to get my presentation from the confidence monitors? Thank you so much. Malware. Everybody here should know what malicious code is. We have worms, we have viruses, we have Trojans, right? And this particular malware is a real challenge to keep off your company systems and even your personal systems. And unfortunately, antivirus software hasn't evolved in today's world to really protect you against these threats. So I have a question for you. If you were walking down the street, if you were walking to your residence, or you're in your office and you spot a USB drive, and you pick it up and it has no owner information on it, but it's, hey, it's a 4 gig drive, it's an interesting thing. I wonder what's on there. Maybe some cool photographs or cool documents. Maybe somebody has put a sticker on the drive that says confidential payroll salary history for first quarter 2012. Or maybe you're just curious, or maybe you want to return it to the owner. What happens when you plug this USB drive into your computer at your home or office? Well, let me show you when you plug, what happens to you when you plug Kevin Mitnick's drive into your computer. So, what we're going to do here is on this screen, I'm going to connect to a computer in Salt Lake City, Utah. That's our attacker machine. So right here is the attacker. This is a Windows 2008 desktop. And over here on this computer, which is Windows 7, fully patched, up on this screen here is the victim. So what we're going to do, we're going to simply just plug in the drive, and we'll see what will happen. Now, Microsoft has gone to lengths to help protect you as the consumer. So in Windows 7, what they did is they took out the ability to auto-execute programs when you plug in a USB drive. However, what you could do is you could modify the firmware on the drive so it emulates a CD DVD, which allows you to execute code. So as soon as I plugged in that USB into this computer, I basically stole the copy of the desktop. So anything that this user does, over here, the victim, they go to Internet Explorer, they look at the news here in Spain. There's some latency, but you'll see it will eventually come up here. So I'm like the invisible man spying on you. In reality, would it be this type of attack? No, it would be much more covert type of software that has the same functionality. And what's scary about this is the attacker over here from Salt Lake City could sit here and actually, if the person appears to be at lunch, could actually from this computer control what's going on. So I could go over here, and again, there's latency involved, you'll see it. But now I'm controlling the desktop here as the attacker. So if I go over here, you'll see it takes a while to come up, and I get a command shell. Now I have full control of this computer just because the victim plugged in a USB drive. It was that easy. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to tell you, if anybody wants a copy of my presentation today, my PowerPoint, I'll be happy to give it to you, but I have to give it to you on USB drive. Why doesn't anyone ever take me up on that offer? I never understand it. But okay, the offer still stands. So let's continue. Now, with malware, there's been one case in history where malware served a good purpose. Because malware is destructive. And I think this was called the So Big Worm. That was many years ago. And what this worm was, is the victim would get an email, purportedly from the FBI in the United States, And in the email, it would say that you've been indicted for visiting very inappropriate websites, and then they would attach a PDF of your indictment. So this one guy in Germany, who in fact had been visiting very inappropriate websites, actually had thought he had been indicted by the FBI in the United States, and promptly went down to the German federal police and turned himself in. Can you believe that? A piece of malware. So I'd love to be the fly on the wall when that guy's talking to his attorney. Right? So malware got this guy to, he actually believed it and turned himself in. So that is the one time in history, I think, where malware served a good purpose. Social networks. We all love them. Facebook. I mean, David Kirkpatrick's his book on, I'm sure you know about it. Maybe you have a copy of his book on Facebook. You have LinkedIn. Well, today, I still have companies hire me to break into their systems and do also social engineering penetration testing. And in doing so, I leverage social networks to identify targets within a company. So if I was going to target ABC company, what I would first do is go to LinkedIn and I look for titles of either engineer, administrator, systems administrator, network administrator through LinkedIn for people that are working for a particular company, and it would create a target list. And why is this target list important? Is because those individuals, network administrators and engineers, usually have domain administrator rights over the network. So if I could just get one of those administrators to make a bad decision, not only could I be in that company's network, I could be in their network with full administrator rights, with access to everything, the crown jewels. Facebook. How do hackers leverage Facebook? Is they'll befriend your friends, right? And once they get enough of your mutual friends, they'll attempt to friend you, right? And then they might leverage that relationship and send you a link. Just a simple hyperlink. Hey, check this out. Your buddy Dave loves this new program or loves this site. You should really take a look at it. As soon as that person, that victim, clicks that link, the game is over. Now the attacker has complete control over that user's workstation. Telecommuters. A lot of companies are going into the cloud. They're trying to use human resources at the office, rather than at the office, at people's homes, right? In some cases, people telecommute maybe once or twice a day. Well, if you think like an attacker, the corporation, the hub, has a lot of security because mostly companies are security aware. So they use their resources to protect the corporate infrastructure. So what do the attackers do? Is they look beyond that. They think out of the box. They think, well, if we could identify a telecommuter, we'll attack that person's machine, their computer, and then when that person brings their laptop into the corporate environment, the hacker is also now has control in the corporate environment because that person has brought in their laptop. How would that actually work? A lot of people at home for convenience use wireless networks, right? So the attacker, sometimes they don't even have security on their networks. So the attacker breaks into the wireless network, using what we call client-side exploitation, is able to get into that victim's computer and now has full control. So even if that employee uses a virtual private network to connect to the corporation, that person is bringing the attacker with that. So not only do employees have to be concerned about using computers in the corporate environment, but also in any environment where they bring that computer back into the corporate infrastructure. That's why it's risky to use corporate laptops at Starbucks, at airports, unless you're using VPNs. Now, I showed you this attack that's been around for years with the USB. How do companies protect themselves against this attack? Is they turn off auto run in the registry. However, hackers are evolving, just like the security industry. There's now a newer attack that uses USB, but this is not a USB drive. This is a circuit board with a Teensy board. that you can get at teensy.com. And using Arduino programming language, it's very simple to program the Teensy device so it acts as an HID, a human interface device. So when you plug this into the target's computer, it actually injects keystrokes. And those keystrokes could download malicious code, execute it, and the attacker has complete control of the machine. There was no way to stop this, like turning off auto run. Have you ever walked into a retail establishment where they're using a cash register and the USB ports are facing the consumer? That's really a bad idea. All it takes is 10 seconds. Plug it in. It blanks the user's screen. That's the first thing that it will do. So the user will just think there's a glitch. It will download the malicious code. It will execute it, and then it will put the display back to normal. It takes 10 seconds. And all it takes is just plugging in this device called the Teensy. I demonstrated for you today. If I have time at the end of the talk, I'll be happy to, but I'm kind of on a short schedule because of timing here. Oops. Phishing attacks. Unless you are new to the internet, everyone here should know phishing attacks. Looking for my laser. Now, this is years ago, right? So the standard phishing attack, I think I got this in 2005. It was from PayPal, which really wasn't PayPal, said there was a deposit to my account. At the time, I thought my girlfriend had sold some computer equipment of mine. I was actually traveling, doing a speaking engagement. Then this is a hyperlink. I highlighted it, and it turned out it was going to a website in Ukraine. I didn't click on it. This is old school. Everybody here should already know about it. But how does it work? When the industry comes up with security products and services that combat this type of fraud, fraud is like a huge bubble. When you press down on the bubble, the fraud just pops up somewhere else because hackers are very innovative. So now, rather than trying to convince you, the victim, to click on a link, like here, or to fill out a form, they're now using integrated voice response systems. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to go to a different slide and I'll come right back to the one I just skipped. Instead, I received this email from MasterCard at mastersecurity.com. It's obviously fraud. But instead of asking me to click on a hyperlink or fill out a form, they simply say there's been a problem with my bank account and to please call our customer service number here to resolve the problem. That seems reasonable, especially if the number here is a toll-free number, right? Because it has some sort of credibility. Let me show you how attackers have now leveraged IVR phishing to steal credit card numbers, passwords, bank account numbers, and such. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to ask the AV people to turn on the microphone for this phone here. What I'm going to do is call my credit card company to get my balance, but I want you to watch the screen as I do this. I'll show you how this works. Make this a little bit. So as I call and put in my card information, take a look on the big screen here. So hopefully I'm going to, if you could turn off this microphone, here we go. And this is the real bank, by the way. Watch the screen.
Welcome to Rapid Rewards credit card services from Chase. These are the last 4 digits of your credit card account number.
It's asking me for my last 4 digits. So I'm going to put it in. See, I'm capturing them. Never works with the last 4.
You entered not denied. Please put the last 4 digits of credit card account number.
Try it again.
Wait, another command not denied. Please for your full 16-digit credit card account number.
That's asking for my whole account number. Put your pens away. Notice I'm capturing it.
Enter your zip code.
That's asking for my zip code to authenticate me, because that's what they do in America.
To speak, please press 0 at the time. Your current balance is 15.
So now it was going to give me my current balance. So how attackers do this before is they would use a open source software product called Asterisk. And what they would do is they would call banks, credit card unions, any type of financial institution, and they would clone the system. In other words, they would call and record the voicemail tree and then set up a duplicate system that sounds and feels like the real bank. They would send it an email, a telephone number that was a toll-free number, but it would go to their system. What the problem was is it would never work. Why? Because they're calling into a fake system, so the victim would never get their true account balance or could do any sort of transactions. So I was thinking, how could I improve this for demonstration purposes? And so what I did is I set up what we call a man-in-the-middle attack. Is now the victim calls a telephone number under my control, it goes to my system, and then my system dials the real bank. So I'm in the middle. So now when anyone puts in their account numbers, passwords, and PINs, I simply capture them. Unfortunately, there's no mitigation for this type of attack. It's really, the mitigation is user beware. Anytime you receive an email with a telephone number from a financial institution, you should verify that that number is really to your financial institution. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't bother checking, because if it's a toll-free number, it looks legit. Now, I don't know if that's common here in Spain, but in the United States, you never get a human, you always get an automated system first. So let's just go back to what I skipped, and we'll go on. Any users of Skype probably already get this. If you allow anybody to contact you, you'll get a pop-up saying that there's been some malicious code detected in your Windows system. Please install the software. Well, it's obviously a scam. When you install the software, you are installing the malicious code. Why do you constantly get these messages on Skype? Because it works. Because 10% of the people that see this message actually do it. So that's kind of scary. Talking about phishing, I want to show you a device. This is called the Fawn. It's a $30 wireless access point. And what I did is I modified the firmware on this device so it passively listens at the network traffic. It only works on open networks, like at coffee shops and airports. $30, it's a throwaway device, set up in an external battery pack. So what this device does is it looks, is that person connecting to Gmail? Are they connecting to Facebook? Are they connecting to Twitter? And if they are, my device actually sends the response packet to the victim's computer saying, with a login page, or with the response before the real Twitter, the real Facebook, right? The real site, the real server responds, I beat the server to the race. So I can inject a login page, right? And the only thing I have to change is that rather than being posted to the HTTPS, which is the secure site, I just make it go to HTTP. The user types in their credentials because it's the real login page. As soon as they submit them, they'll get some sort of error, but this captures the username and password. So imagine attackers that just basically buy 10, 20, 30 of these, plant them around wherever, the city, businesses, or wherever, but they don't put Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. They have Bank of America, or BBVA, Santander, real valuable assets where they could steal credentials to actually steal money and that sort of thing. So what I like to call this is kind of my pocket fisherman because it fits in the pocket. So that's kind of scary how this stuff has kind of evolved. All right, let me go up one. How many of you receive email and your company allows you to receive PDF files? Quite a number? Right, because PDFs are safe, right? Of course they are. So let me show you what happens when we open up a PDF file. So what we're going to do here is over here here, this is a different system in Salt Lake City, Utah, and this is running a Trojan Listener. This is a piece of software that's waiting for a piece of malware to connect back. So this is the attacker computer. And now over here on the victim, can we put this number 1 up on here? Makes it easier. And this is just running XP. So what we're going to do is I have a file here, rather than going to email, it's time-sensitive proposal.pdf. Okay? So as soon as the victim clicks on it, there's going to be some latency for the malware to be installed. But what eventually happens, what will pop up here is basically a Trojan Listener. It's a piece of malware. It's invisible on the user's computer, but it lets you have full control. It allows you to turn on their webcam and look at them physically. It allows you to turn on their microphone on their laptop so you can hear their audio. It allows you to steal their files, to upload files, to have complete control of the machine. So you see the connection here that popped up? That's the malware. And now as the attacker, I have a full menu of stuff I can do. Screen capture. I could turn on screen capture and hit start. Okay, then what's going to happen here is it's capturing the screen. Now this computer is in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm connected to it. It's not here in this room. This one is. So now let's say I bring up Google. There's time delay because the screen's kind of small here. I can make it bigger for you. It's kind of slow. I'm bringing up, trying to bring up Google or whatever. But it's the same type of idea. However, it gives the attacker much more control of the victim's computer. This kind of is, in reality, this is a common Trojan called poison ivy. So again, you want my presentation, not only do you get it on USB, but I'll even give it to you on PDF. So you have to be aware of opening a PDF. So I don't know why this, maybe Google's having a problem. Let me try CNN. See, as CNN comes up, and then you'll see it in like a second or two. It should come up right over here. See here, it's actually stealing the screen. It's giving a progress bar. And it's kind of slow for some reason, maybe because of the system in Salt Lake. Now I have a copy of it. But I could do anything on that person's computer, and it's totally invisible. So I'm going to uninstall the Trojan. So now it's uninstalled, and we'll go back to the presentation. Because there's more. That's not all. How safe are you feeling now? How about users that go to sites and ever go to a site and like a pop-up comes up and you look at the pop-up, maybe it's a Java applet because Java has to run, and then you don't want to click on it, but then you look and you see, well, it's signed by the website that I'm visiting, so it must be safe. Right? It's signed because when you look at Java applets, if it wasn't signed, you might not trust it, you might hit cancel. So let me show you another trick that could be done to do the same thing. Is we're going to go to Internet Explorer here. We're going to bring up that Trojan Listener again because I uninstalled it. So you should see, we see nothing here. It's like uninstall. And now we're going to go to Facebook. Yes. So we're going to Facebook. It's going to bring up a login page, but now we see something different. We see a Java applet coming up. It's published by Facebook, meaning it's signed. It's a facebook.es. And let's say I'm a user. I don't want to click it anyway, because I just don't trust anything. So the user hits cancel. But what my software does is then every 2 seconds it pops it up anyway. It's called nagging. So until they click yes, it's going to pop up the Java applet. What are the users going to do? They're going to click it. I guarantee it. So they just click run. What happens when they click run, it will redirect them to the real Facebook. Right there, it's the real Facebook. And now it's installed the Trojan on this computer. So in a second, we'll see that it will pop up here, the same idea. Hopefully. Same type of thing. So not only do you have to be concerned about opening up PDF files, what about Java applets that are signed? Now, see it popped up here, the Trojan? So now I have, again, full control. I could, over here, I could bring up a shell, what we call a DOS shell, so when I'm doing a directory, I'm actually doing it on this computer. So now I have, again, full control by just that person and that employee making the bad decision of clicking that Java applet. Now, what Oracle has recently done is with self-signed Java applets, they've now, when it's self-signed, they won't put a company name in there to help protect you. So how did the hackers get around this? And I just recently did this. I wanted to have a Java applet that I could sign that would seem legitimate to a user when I'm doing pen testing. So I registered a company for $300 called Oracle Java. I just read it, even a company. So I have a company, it's registered to be Oracle Java, and I just ordered a signing certificate for my company, so now I can sign my Java applet. So now when anyone gets a Java applet, it's verified by Oracle Java. People would think, oh, that's part of Oracle Corporation. It really isn't, it's a separate company. So it's very easy to do, it just takes a few $100, and then it becomes not a self-signed Java applet, but a fully signed Java applet. So it's kind of scary. Let me continue. In some cases, the attackers have, they have no desire to get access to your computer systems. They simply want access to the information. So I'm going to share with you a story about a hack I had done, not because I'm proud of it, just because I think it really illustrates the threat and impact of social engineering. And at the time, this was 1992, I was living in Denver, Colorado. I was living under the name of Eric Weiss. Why Eric Weiss? Well, first of all, the FBI was looking for me, and I didn't want them to find me. And second of all, Eric Weiss is the real name for my idol magician, Harry Houdini. So I thought I had a sense of humor, but I later found out the FBI did not. But that's a story for another day. So my friend hands me this brochure for the MicroTac Ultralight. And this phone was like the iPhone of today. It was, reminded me of the Star Trek communicator, right? That's what made the phone so popular, because it was a brilliant design piece of technology. And then I made a stupid and regrettable decision that I got into a lot of trouble for, is I decided I was going to try to get the source code to the MicroTac Ultralight, and the source code is proprietary. They don't give that out. So at the time I was working for this law firm, and I left early in the day, and I called directory assistance in the United States, and I simply asked for Motorola Corporation. And I was given a toll-free number to call. I called the number, and a receptionist answers, and I said, hi, I'm looking for the project manager of the MicroTac Ultralight. And the nice receptionist had told me, all our cellular phone development's handled out of Schaumburg, Illinois. And she goes, would you like their telephone number? I said, sure. She gives me the phone number. I call the number, and I get another receptionist. I go, hi, I'm looking for the project manager of the MicroTac Ultralight project. I'm transferred around 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 times, and then I end up speaking to the vice president in charge of the Pan America Cellular Subscriber Group of all of our world. And I go, hey, this is Rick with R&D in Arlington Heights, because I learned through my other phone calls in Arlington Heights R&D facility. I'm looking for the project manager of the MicroTac. He goes, oh, that's Pam, she works for me, would you like her extension? I said, sure, he gave me the extension. And he says, can I help you with anything? I said, no, I'll talk to Pam about it, thank you so much. And the call ended. And I called Pam. But I didn't get her, I got her outgoing read on her voicemail, and she told her callers that she just left on a 2-week vacation, and the date she was returning, and that if you needed any help whatsoever, please call Alicia on extension blah, blah, blah. So and I'm walking in a snowstorm. I'm outside walking to my apartment, which is 20 minutes away from where I was working, and it was snowing that day. I was never expecting this, to actually work. So I called Alicia. You know, she said, if you need any help whatsoever, call Alicia. And she gave the number on her voicemail. I called Alicia. I said, hi, Alicia, this is Rick with R&D in Arlington Heights. I go, did Pam leave on vacation yet? Oh, she has. Well, she told me before she left she was going to send me the source code to the MicroTag Ultralight. And then I wasn't expecting her to say this. She goes, well, Rick, what version do you want? And I didn't even research the version etiquette of this phone. And I'm walking down the street, I go, how about the latest and the greatest? So she's typing on her computer. You know, after about 5-6 minutes pass, she goes, Rick, I found the source code releases for the MicroTag, but there's a problem. There's hundreds of directories, and within each directory there are hundreds of files. I said, that's no problem. I said, do you know how to use tar and gzip? That's like WinZip in Windows. And she told me she doesn't know how to use it. I said, well, would you like to learn? And she goes, I love learning new things. So I became her instructor, and I taught her how to use tar and gzip. And at the end of the lesson was a single 3-megabyte file with the source code for the latest release of the phone. So then I asked Alicia, I go, do you know how to use FTP? And she goes, file transfer program, right? I go, precisely. And as I'm walking down the street, I remember, I can't give her a host name like hacker.edu because it's outside of Motorola's domain, right? It's not move.com. But I had a good knack for remembering IP addresses, so I gave her an IP address to a system where there was anonymous accounts. Then she tried making a connection, and the connection kept timing out. She tried it 1, 2, 3 times, and then she goes, Rick, I go, yes. She goes, I'm going to have to talk to my security manager about what you're asking me to do. And I go, no, wait. And I was already on hold. In 5 minutes from my apartment. And I thought, okay, the gig is up. You know, obviously they're going to realize this was a trick. So 3, 5, 7, 8 minutes pass. I'm getting nervous because I figure, oh, they're going to hook up a tape recorder to the phone and get my voice. And that's going to be, record my voice, that's going to be Exhibit A later. So I was really nervous. And then she comes back on the line. She goes, Rick? Notice I'm not speaking. She goes, that IP address you gave us is outside of Motorola's campus. That's how I answered her. And she goes, well, my security manager said to send any files outside of Motorola's campus, we need to use a special proxy server, and I don't have an account to send you the file. I go, because I was disappointed. And she goes, well, I have good news for you. My security manager gave me his personal username and password so I could send you the file. So by the time I put in the key into the front door of my apartment, I had the source code to the MicroTag Ultralight. Right? Today, would that work? No. Motorola is a great company. They've improved their security, I'm sure, over this is 20 years ago. But back then, it was 10, 15 minutes on the phone, we got the source code with the MicroTag Ultralight. This attack would still work at other companies today. Right? I mean, this really illustrates the threat and impact of social engineering in my mind. So what are the holes in the human firewall? Why does social engineering work? The number one reason is the illusion of invulnerability. It's not going to happen to me. You know, kind of like, I'm a great driver, I don't have to wear a seatbelt, right? That type of mentality. In corporate environments, the culture is people tend to implicitly trust others, which is a good thing. But unfortunately, you have social engineers or hackers that manipulate the good people in your company to get what they want. Employees sometimes believe security protocols are a waste of time. In many businesses, they have to choose complex passwords. They're forced to do it. So they pick a complex password, but instead they'll write it down on a Post-it note and stick it on their monitor, or the clever ones will hide it under their keyboard. Right? So they're simply taking a security protocol that's important and basically threw it away. People underestimate the value of information, like Alicia at Motorola, right? People want to naturally help one another in companies. So if they perceive that a fellow employee is calling and asking them to do something or to reveal information, they'll do it. In some cases, it's not because they want to help, but it's the rule of reciprocity. Well, if I help this person, person, I can always call on this person for a favor in like kind. That's a very powerful influence tactic. And of course, people that don't realize the consequences of their actions, an employee being told, well, just type this into your computer to fix this problem, but it doesn't fix the problem, it allows the attacker in, and it happens because the employee didn't understand what they were doing. Intelligence gathering. This is where the attackers actually use open resources to gather information on your company to attack your employees. They use the internet, they use open source information, dumpster diving, and I'll get into that in a moment. But what they do is they go to your organization's website and they look for valuable information. What are the names of your personnel? They want to kind of get a sense of your corporate structure, your organization chart, the titles and positions of employees, the lingo and terminology in your company so they sound like one of the in-group. They want to look for people, obviously, that have recently started at the company because those are great targets. Because those people are usually on probation and they'll usually cooperate and are easily fooled because they don't recognize the voices of every employee in the company yet, even in small companies. And of course, telecommuters, which I discussed earlier. And then there's researching the people that the hackers are targeting, and this is again through social networks. They want to find out, personal information that would help them develop a rapport. For example, if you go into someone's Facebook page, you could easily determine what their hobbies and interests are. Then, when the hacker contacts that person, they also explain that they have the same hobbies and interests. And then people like people that are like themselves. So it's an influence technique that hackers use to develop a rapport so there's a higher likelihood of compliance. Now, dumpster diving. What exactly is that? That's actually going into the trash of a company and looking for valuable information. Now, years ago, this is 1990s, early 1990s, I went dumpster diving at a local phone company, and this was their intercompany directory, which I still have. It lists the name and title of every employee, their email address, but the whole corporate hierarchy from the top, the president of the company, all the way down to the person that works in the mailroom. This is gold to an attacker because now they can impersonate people in this directory to gain compliance, right? And they know the whole corporate structure. So let me give you some tips. If you ever go dumpster diving and you find a big dumpster, you pull out a trash bag and you shake it and it feels like or sounds like liquid, put it aside. That's not one you want to go through. Trust me, you don't. You want to target the smaller trash bags that are usually next to people's cubicles or offices. In fact, back in the 1980s, some friends of mine, we went dumpster diving at a local phone company, and we found that there was a document that was torn into bits of paper like it was confetti. And we were very interested because we were 17 years old at the time. What is this document? Why did someone go to this trouble to hide it? And over at a donut shop, and over 3 hours of having coffee and putting this document together on the table, it turned out to be the entire username and password list for one of the phone company's most sensitive computers. So that's why they went through the trouble. Moral of the story, use a cross shredder, don't do it by hand. Bad idea. But not only do you find documents in trash, electronic media, CDs, DVDs, USB drives, old computers that people simply toss out that contain valuable information that they haven't wiped. In every social engineering attack, we have components. We have the attacker has to establish an identity and a role, who they are. They have to create a plausible reason for the victim, a story, right, to gain compliance. I mean, these are the two major components. And then the attacker also has to build trust and confidence that they are who they say they are and that they're authorized, right? For example, imagine this scenario. You're a CFO of a major company. You go to some sort of meeting off-site. You have a secretary that handles everything. You're out of communication because you're busy, but your secretary, your personal assistant, receives a text message from you the CFO, saying that when Jim Davis calls, it's okay to release our confidential financials to him. He's helping us out on the project, but please don't call or text me because I'm in a very important meeting. And this is a text message from the CFO to the personal assistant. What are the chances that that personal assistant is going to comply? 99.9%, right? So if I could get a volunteer from the audience where we could use their phone, I will show you how easy it is for an attacker to do this. Do I have a volunteer that wants to come up on the stage and we'll just do this very quickly? You only have to give me your phone and your phone number. Anybody, or should I just do it with my own phone? I'll do it with my own phone. Unless we have some brave people in the audience. Nobody, huh? Okay. So what I'm going to do is put the camera on this one. And this is a SIM card I bought here called Happy Mobile. And what we're going to do is I'm going to text Happy Mobile SIM phone, that phone, from any phone I want with a message. So what we're going to do, I'm going to bring up my site here. One second. Whoops. And I put a password to protect my spoofer from other people from messing with my system. So, what I'd like to do is have someone from the audience pick a number that you want the message to come from, so you know that this is not a setup. Anybody in the front row can just give me a phone number, a cell phone number? Anybody? What's your cell phone number? 608 2 what? 23 42 40. So I'm going to send the message from you to this phone over here. Now this technique is called SMS spoofing. So country code is 34, and this is my cell phone here in Spain. And then I'm going to use her phone, the sender is 608 234 240. And of course, this is the best part of the message. Please give Kevin all my passwords. Now. So let's see what happens. I send it, and then over here in a moment, what we should see is a text message from your phone. I don't have you in my contacts, so it might have the +34 in front of it, but we should get a message in a moment. So this technique is called SMS spoofing, and I'm going to continue with the presentation as we're waiting for the text message. Sometimes it takes a bit. Sometimes it takes a minute for some reason. I hope I did it to the right number. Let me check that.
Kevin, it would arrive, you were missing one number on the...
Oh, is one number off?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me try it again. I am sorry. 34 693 595. That's the right amount of digits, right? Okay, perfect. So 34 608 234 240. Kevin. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's see if that one works. Give it a second. Worked yesterday. Oh, there it is. Can you see that clearly? Yeah. And is that your number? Yeah. So here, if it was in my contact list, it wouldn't show the +34. It would just show her name, and it would say, please give Kevin all my passwords. So this is a very simple technique where attackers could basically spoof SMS messages, and this isn't because it's Happy Mobile's network. This works worldwide on every mobile network out there. So it's not the provider or the operator, it's just how the system works, because once you're trusted, you're trusted. You can also do a thing called caller ID spoofing where I can call you on your phone with voice and make it any number I want as well. Same thing, it's a vulnerability in the system, but you have to think, how can an attacker leverage this type of vulnerability to actually get Peter? These types of attacks to do remote attacks, but they actually try to physically get into your premises. And I just want to show you this type of new technology. This is called a hardware keylogger. You put this between a person's computer and keyboard, and it logs and encrypts every keystroke, I think up to 2 million. These have been around for years. What is the downside? The downside is the attacker has to go back and retrieve the device. These devices are great for the insider threat, because you get insiders that have access to people's computers. This is the threat that you really have to be concerned about. Now, of course, technology has improved. So that's the old keylogger. This is the new one. And you figure, this new one is bigger. Usually when technology improves, it's smaller. Why is this hardware keylogger bigger? Anyone guess? Because it has a Bluetooth radio in it. So now you play it once, and you sit out in the parking lot, and you get all the keystrokes. Right? So now, the most recent USB keylogger now associates with a local Wi-Fi, right? That could be in somebody's car or a cell phone that's tethered. It now sends the keystrokes through a wireless network, right? So you not only do you have to be concerned about remote threats, but also physical threats. So back to the building resistance to social engineering. One of the most difficult things is getting your employees to say no to a request, because it's very uncomfortable. If they receive a telephone call, an email from who they perceive to be a fellow employee, they want to help. They're a member of the team. So it's difficult to say no. In fact, I'm kicking myself in the butt for not inventing this device. Right? This is a magical device. Do you guys have problems with telemarketers here in Spain, like we do in the US? Okay, a few nodded their head. This device is called the telephone butler. Now let me show you how this works, right? You simply plug this into your phone line, and you plug your phone into here. And when you receive a phone call, you still have to answer the phone and find out who it is. Hi, who's calling? And if it's somebody you don't want to talk to, you say, hold on. You push the star button on the phone, and the telephone butler kicks in and says, hello, this is the telephone butler. The person that you called doesn't wish to speak to you at this time. Please do not call back. Like, what? So people will spend $50 to say, no, I don't want to talk to you. Isn't that amazing? These guys are actually making money. That's great. So, you can teach your employees at your company that it's okay to say no if you can't verify that the request is legitimate, or you can buy them all telephone butlers, whatever you like to do. It's amazing. So, how do we build the human firewall? Well, first and foremost, we all know about security policies. I think the one main policy that you have to consider is data classification. In 50% of the companies I consult with, they have a very limited or no data classification policy whatsoever, which means that employees could be fooled into giving out information. I believe when you're trying to train people in the company about security policies, I think it's best to have the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. Meaning you have security protocols that people could easily remember and that refer them to security policy, because you can't expect employees to read your entire security policy handbook and remember it all. That's kind of like reading the vehicle code. It just doesn't work. I believe in interactive social engineering pen testing. Companies hire me to pen test their networks technically, but very few have social engineering pen tests because they don't understand the threat. So I'm a proponent that you should use whatever companies out there that offer these type of services. And finally, there's a technique called inoculation, right? It's kind of like how you treat certain types of medical diseases, is you inoculate the host from the disease by giving him tiny doses of it, kind of like a flu shot. Well, there's software out there, like there's a company called KnowBe4, and what they do is they have a product that companies can buy, and what this product does is the IT department sets it up, and it tries attacking your users. It sends them phishing emails. They look very legitimate. And if they click on it, it tells them, hey, you messed up. This wasn't legitimate. This was a phish. And it keeps track of it. And then as these employees are falling victim to these types of scams, it starts training them. So I believe that one of the most effective methods in helping users and companies make better decisions is inoculating them from these types of threats. Because when you buy products like this, the manufacturer or the product developer is always keeping them up to date, so all your users are being attacked like they would in the real world. And finally, using technology to take as much decision-making away from the employee. So, case in point, when I call my bank in America, they verbally ask me for my password over the phone. And the telephone banker actually sees the password, and it helps me if I'm valid, if it's valid. If not, they won't help me. But why does the bank allow the employee to see the password? The employee should type in the password, and the bank computer should say it's a match or mismatch. So I'm, again, a proponent of using technology to take as much decision-making away from the employee as possible. And then finally, I have some additional resources. Art of Deception is a book I wrote that talks about about social engineering attacks and has a lot of different stories. And I recently came out with my memoir called Ghost in the Wires. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's kind of all the crazy adventures that I did when I was in my younger and insane years. Right? So if you want to read like a Catch Me If You Can. And then there's a book called Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini that talks about how sales and marketeers use influence to persuade customers to buy products, to buy services. Well, these same influence techniques are used by hackers and social engineers to convince your employees to do something they shouldn't do. So if you know how influence works and you know the principles behind it, you could detect these types of approaches. So I highly recommend this book. So I hope my presentation today kind of was a wake-up call. That not only do you have to be concerned about your technology, but you have to train your users and let them know how these attacks work, so they don't become victims. They don't become victims. Because don't forget, again, all it takes is one employee in your business to make a bad decision, and your whole network could potentially be compromised. That's pretty scary. And how that differs from before, when I was a hacker before, we actually tried to exploit what we call server services that were exposed to the network. Stuff like Telnet, FTP, SSH. These were services that were exposed by the server. Well, in today's world, all the exploitation is not going in that direction. Why? Because when you break into a server that's on the perimeter of the network, that's in the company's DMZ. And you're still segregated from the internal network. If an attacker could use social engineering to convince one of your employees to make a bad decision, then that attacker's into your internal network and has access to the crown jewels. So I want to thank all of you for being here at my presentation today. Don't forget, you want a copy of it. I have it for you on USB or PDF file. It's your choice. And sometime today, I don't know when, whenever the staff here at Telefonica say I could, wherever they want me to do this, I brought a lot of my business cards. Not only does it have my contact information, but my business card actually has utility. You break off these devices, and it's your very own lockpick set. Right? So you can go into YouTube, and you can learn how to open a lock. So if you get locked out of your house, oh, where's Kevin's card? Okay, now I have a lockpick set. So it's kind of cool. People love it. So I brought a few hundred of these. So any of you that see me around, you're welcome to one. And again, thank you for being here at my presentation today. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, this should be a call to action. Beware of the threats out there, especially as it involves social engineering. So thank you very much.